I've become aware of certain programs instituted by the government. These programs have caused the release of certain germs that cause disease, suffering, famine. I refuse to become a pawn in their little game.
I see. I assume that's why you've made these extraordinary arrangements for our interview.
I don't know who you are. I don't know where you've been. The very thought of bodily vapors oozing from your every pore causes my stomach to turn.
Mr. James, sir, I really do want to express my gratitude for this opportunity to talk with you. I know that your work is being very well received. Why, sales of your piece, Video Answering Machine, are doing quite well.
Oh, yes. It's available in all formats, in the video stores everywhere, for only $29.95. This interview is over.
Well, yes, I'm sure you're quite pleased. Thank you so very much for your time.
And what of Diane, the lone woman in the group? Meek, uninteresting. Some would even call her dull. But how is it that such a lifeless person could create such masterpieces?
What Diane was trying to do was to demonstrate the camouflage that exists in everyday life. She was taking something that was once very representational and covering it up, masking it in the same way that nature has been covered up by man.
Well, my colleague, Mr. Bedlam, of course, is entitled to his opinion, however embarrassing that might be. But I think most respectable art historians view this brilliant young lady as making a statement about contemporary art. She was of the opinion that contemporary art was all style and no substance, that at the heart of most contemporary pieces you have, after all, just a gaudy piece of trash. Thus her metaphor, the velvet painting.
Well, I feel that my work represents the epitome of the stagnation of society today. Well, Elvis was king once. Now they sell velvet paintings of him. Well, I don't know. I guess I just wanted to say something about that.
Wendy describes how the work Diane was doing really reflected her inner personality, her real self.
She was one of the dullest people I've ever met.
Whenever a group of brilliant young artists come together, conflict is inevitable. The first of these was over a controversial piece by Sid Ease entitled Roadkill.
Man has no use for possums, squirrels, and raccoons, so he just runs them over, splattering them across the pavement like paint on a canvas. Now, if that's not art, I don't know what is. But of course, as with all great ideas, people feel threatened. The authorities, they threatened to close down the show.
But there are some who are skeptical about the details of this story, who believe that they were greatly exaggerated by Biff Bark and Sid Ease for publicity's sake.
Roadkill. I remember that. Sid said it represented the death and decay of society, and Biff played it up as a piece so controversial that the health authorities threatened to shut down the show. But the real controversy was that there wasn't any roadkill. It was the middle of winter, and he simply couldn't find any dead animals.
He tried to run over Diane's cat.
The night before the show, I was up in my room, and I hear this car come screeching down the road. I looked out the window, and Diane's cat, Necrophilia, comes racing across the yard up onto the porch. The strange thing is that I could swear it was Sid's car.
But Monsieur von Bark is still adamant about his story.
Thanks. You're welcome. What do you mean did they try to shut down the show? These guys, these huge guys from the health department, tried to beat the crap out of me. I guess those guys don't appreciate good art.
It was obvious, however, that Monsieur von Bach appreciated good art. He was the original organizer of the school.
I was the guy that started this whole thing. It was my idea. I made those guys, John Blanc and everyone. But do any of them call to give me a break? If it weren't for me, nobody would ever heard of Enrico Rodriguez.
Wendy McBride tells how Biff banded these artists together.
I knew Biff when he was playing Biff Bark, and now he's Biff Von Bark. I think he changed it because the guys used to call him Biff Barf. He was a real operator. Before he came along, everyone was very happy doing their own thing. But he had this big idea that neo-post-minimalism was going to be the next big thing, bigger than Dada, bigger than pop.
Was Mr. von Bach simply interested in making a fast buck? Or was his effort one of the most craftily constructed pieces of conceptual art ever conceived?
So what if I work at Sears now? I'm just incorporating my artist's ideas into my lifestyle. Kind of like that guy, Enrico Rodriguez.
Enrico Rodriguez was a Washington native whose humble origins were in the southeast quadrant, the section of the city known as Anacostia. He had no training in art whatsoever, had never once exhibited his work. But this gave him a sense of naivete that so many neo-post-minimalists were trying to capture. This piece, entitled Dominoes 895, is brilliant in concept and execution. Inside, we find color. Rich reds and browns, stains as if from this last slice of pizza. On the outside, a receipt is taped to the box. The receipt is signed by the artist. He is an elusive artist, living the life of a recluse, working as an elevator operator in an apartment building in Anacostia.
No hablo inglés.
I just want to ask you a couple of questions. Are you Neo?
What is it that drives a man to live his entire life to fulfill the concepts of art? For the answer, we asked the noted art historian, Jean-Pierre Gravité.
The story of Enrico Rodriguez is one of the most interesting in art history. A man of humble beginnings who made his mark, his contribution to his school, and then wished to return to his simple beginnings. He just wants to be left alone.
Well, I believe Monsieur Gravité's assessment is a bit jejune. It is indicative of most of his opinions lacking insight and analysis. How can anyone not see that what we have here is the most brilliant artist in the 20th century? This man not only made an artistic contribution, but he adopted the ideas that went into that piece of art, that material entity, and made those ideas a way of life. The object of neo-post-minimalism was to remove the creative process, which the artist felt just added confusion. Rodriguez removed himself from the art scene, to the point where he refuses to admit that he was even ever a part of that community. He even refuses to admit that he speaks English.
Enrico used to deliver pizzas here all the time. I don't think he spoke a word of English. To my knowledge, he wasn't an artist at all.
The concepts of neo-post-minimalism were applied in all media. The first to apply these concepts in film and still photography was Bob. At one of his recent exhibitions, Bob talked about his work.
Same day. And I took them to People's to be processed. I thought, what a nice egalitarian-sounding name, People's. I didn't think that they would give me any special, any preferential treatment. And look what I get back. A smudge, a glitch, an accident of process. I mean, I felt like going down there and say, what's wrong with you guys? Who do you think you are, Andy Warhol? I mean, look at this, you jerks. I'm trying to expunge all creative processes from my work. And what do I get back? Somebody's going to come up and say,